In this week's episode, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf, Kenneth Moore examines the first hit song to come from the Walt Disney Studios and talks of the early success of the Boswell sisters and Al Bowley. He also celebrates Gracie Field's most successful song and goes back to a time when Stanley Holloway's Bloody Tar was considered slightly risque.
For a great many people today, the year 1932 begins to take on just a faint look of modern times, because by now the world was moving into alignments that we're still familiar with today. In America, a frail-looking character called Franklin Roosevelt was on the brink of the presidency, and in Germany, a Mr. Schicklgruber was also within a pace or two of absolute power. Artistically, too, the pattern of performance and exploitation were taking on the forms that would apply right down to the moment nearly 8 years later when the said Mr. Schicklgruber's horror show took over. By 1932, the public was conditioned to accept broadcasting, gramophone records, and talking pictures. And as the Great Depression continued to depress people and unemployment figures rocketed in Britain and America, the songwriter was faced with two choices: either to reflect hard times in his music or to provide people with an escape from the hard times. To be frank about it, both schools flourished. The socially conscious songs may have been few and far between, but when they arrived, they made their point, especially with regard to songs about returning war heroes who were ending up on the breadline.
Remember my forgotten man? You put a rifle in his hand. You sent him far away. You shouted, hip hooray! But look at him today. Remember my forgotten man. You had him cultivate the land. He walked behind a plow. The sweat fell from his brow. But look at him right now. And once he used to love me. I was happy then. He used to take care of me. Won't you bring him back again? 'Cause ever since the world began, a woman's got to have a man. Forgetting him, you see, means you're forgetting me. Like my forgotten man.
My Forgotten Man, sung there by Joan Blondell, came from a musical called Gold Diggers of 1933, one of the key talking pictures of the whole decade, of which more in a moment. But before we look into the implications of the Gold Diggers, what about the other school of songwriting thought? The one that felt that social consciousness was no subject for popular music. One of the big successes at this point in time was a ballad by British writer Ray Noble, who was in no doubt at all what the function of the composer was.
The whole point of songwriting then was that people knew about the social comment. When it came to songs, they were trying to get away from it. They didn't want to know anything about social comment. Songs were for relaxation. And listening to popular songs is a form. You call it escape. It's a relaxation for the mind. It's not a means of introducing the mind to what's going on in the world. This is a different thing entirely.
Well, Ray Noble certainly didn't write a protest song with Love is the Sweetest Thing. The song became associated with one of the most remarkable crooners in British history, Al Bowley, as Noble admits.
He, of course, was very much a character, and he fell into New York life. Well, of course, Al was a very well-traveled man anyway. He'd been half around the world. And he was a great sports lover. He used to go to all kinds of sporting events and so forth. And the only thing with Al was that he was one of these rather simple chaps. Either a fella was the nicest guy in the world, in which case he promptly emptied his pockets if the fella needed money, and I've seen him do it. He could have anything. He'd give him the shirt off his back, you know. Or he was the dirtiest scoundrel unhung, in which case Al could rip him in part, and he could. He was an extremely strong man. It was either black or white with him. There were no grays. He was an interesting character. He laid a trail of female destruction across the United States, which I don't think has ever been beaten.
Love is the sweetest thing. What else on earth could ever bring such happiness to everything as love's old story? Love is the strangest thing. No song of birds upon the wing shall in our hearts more sweetly sing than love's old story. Whatever hearts may desire, whatever life may send, this is a tale that never will tire. This is the song without end. Love is the strongest thing, the oldest, yet the latest thing. I only hope that fate may bring love's story to you. Love is the sweetest thing.
Al Bowley singing with Ray Noble's orchestra, Love is the Sweetest Thing, and so were the royalties that accrued to composer Noble. As a general rule, Noble's theory about escapist music was a valid one, and even the songwriting team which wrote My Forgotten Man would have agreed with it for the most part. That team was a very remarkable one, composed of musician Harry Warren and lyricist Al Dubin, and Warren and Dubin were, to the Hollywood musical of those days, what Rodgers and Hart or the Gershwin brothers were to the Broadway show. With two 1932 productions to their credit, 42nd Street and the first of the Gold Diggers series, Dubin and Warren made world-famous A New Style Movie Fairy Story, the backstage musical where the obscure chorus girl gets pushed onto the stage on opening night as the producer says to her, you're going to go out there, and when you're going to come back, you're going to be a star. The reality was not quite so romantic, as Harry Warren remembers the status of the songwriter in Hollywood.
I think they thought of it on the studio lots as the lowest form of art. The songwriters were absolutely ignored at the time on studio lots. But if a guy came from New York that had just done the show, he was supposed to be somebody. And he could be a songwriter. That's what impressed them. Some of these producers were impressed by fellows that went to college, who spoke very good English, and analyzed a script and double talk, and they thought it was great. And Buzz Berkeley said to the head of the studio, when they asked him, how are you going to do this number, Buzz? And he'd give him a double talk. He said, well, you see, we go this way, have the girls over there, and we zoom in and over there, then we move over here, we break out, and we show a big thing, when he keeps on doing all this double talk, and I say, next time one of these all through, he said, how much is it going to cost? That's the whole history of making pictures. What's it going to cost?
what's wrong. We never see a headline about a bread line today. And when we see the landlord, we can look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money. Come on, my honey. Let's spend it, land it, send it rolling along.
Jack Hilton and his orchestra, In the Money. The words of that song are graceful enough, but the man who wrote them, Al Dubin, appears to have been anything but graceful. He and his partner, Harry Warren, started pouring out hits from the moment they got to the West Coast, and Warren has given us a most vivid word portrait of Dubin.
He was a 6'3" or 4", big husky, weighed 300 and some pounds, and he ate like Henry VIII. He loved to eat. He'd eat 2 steaks at one sitting. While he was eating a steak, he'd ask the chef to make him another one. It was nothing for him to eat 2 steaks. He could drink a whole case of Coca-Cola. But he used to go, he loved faraway places too. He had a black chauffeur, and the black chauffeur had a uniform, wore a uniform, off-red uniform. You can imagine what he looked like. And he loved to go down to these Mexican border towns down here. And one time when he was down there, we were in trouble at the studio, and they were trying to get him. We couldn't find him. We finally traced him because he had a habit of ordering in big portions, you know, so they would remember him. So I said, well, you come right back. They need a lyric to this melody. He says, I've got the lyric. He says, get a pencil and paper.
In the shadows, let me come and sing to you. Let me dream a song that I can bring to you. Take me in your arms and let me cling to you. Let me linger long. Let me live my song. In the winter, let me bring the spring to you. Let me feel that I mean everything to you. Love's old song will be new. In the shadows when I come and sing to you. In the shadows let me come and sing to you. Let me dream a song that I can bring to you. Take me in your arms and let me cling to you. Let me linger long. Let me live my song, dear one. In the winter, let me bring the spring to you. Let me feel that I mean everything to you. Love's old song will be new. In the shadows when I come and sing to you, dear. In the shadows when I come and sing to you.
Sometimes writers like Warren and Dubin got their ideas from the scenario, sometimes from the personality of the stars. But there were other ways that successful songs came to be written. For instance, keeping your eyes and ears open. Warren explains.
We had a gal that on the one a lot. We used to kid her a lot about some guy she was going with. And she was real southern. She had a southern accent, you know. And he said to her, why do you go around with that guy all the time? And she says, I don't know. I guess he's getting to be a habit. You know, and that's how we wrote He's Getting to Be a Habit with me.
Every kiss, every hug seems to act just like a drug. You're getting to be a habit with me.
Let me stay in your arms. I'm addicted to your charms. You're getting to be a habit with me.
I used to think your love was something that I could take or leave alone.
But now I couldn't do without my supply. I need you for my own.
Ooh, I can't break away. I must have you every day, as regularly as coffee or tea.
You got me in your clutches and I can't get free. You're getting to be a habit with me.
Can't break it. You're getting to be a habit with me. I wouldn't break it if I could. You're getting to be a habit with me.
I don't really definitely think you all should. You're getting to be a habit with me.
Dinah Shore and Tony Martin getting in the habit. Now, while writers like Dubin and Warren were turning out hit songs just like that for the movie business, the great New York names were just as busy doing the same thing for Broadway. As a matter of fact, 1932 was the last time that Fred Astaire would be thought of as a musical comedy star. Soon, he too was to become part of the Hollywood Dream Factory. But in 1932, he was still tapping it out on the Great White Way, giving the kind of performance that made him every songwriter's favorite singer. Not perhaps the best singer, but the favorite. When he starred in Cole Porter's The Gay Divorcee in 1932, Porter went into raptures over the Astaire singing style, and fellow composer Johnny Green explains why, with Astaire's own view of it to follow.
You see Fred Astaire walking down the street, that's already a theatrical performance, unique unto him. Just the way he moves, the way he walks, the way he uses his hands, everything about him. And it's a very pleasant voice, and he's the most musical person that ever was. His paws have musicality, you know. And he reads a lyric, and he senses the relationship between a melodic line and a lyric, and the integration of each with the other, in a way that nobody else does, really. And he has no interest whatever in being the composer. He's only interested in being the interpreter. This is one of the maladies, one of the diseases of the last 30 years. The singers who are frustrated composers, they're going to do it better than Cole Porter did it. They're going to improve on Cole Porter's lyric with dropping in those added prepositions and conjunctions. If Cole Porter had wanted those ands and bits and buts and ifs, he'd have put them there. And I'll guarantee, without mentioning any names, including the biggest singers of our time, but Fred Astaire has never done that to any song.
My reaction to Night and Day, I just didn't know what it was, because it was long, and, well, when you hear any music the first time, you can't get it all in, but that one particularly was a difficult one to get with, because I was constantly wondering how I would be able to sing it. I had the feeling that it was a very good song, because of what it said and the way it talked about night and day, so love and all that kind of business. But the melody is what I was wondering whether or not I could handle. And there were some parts of it that weren't too easy to get. But when I got to working on it, then is when I thought it was a really good song. And then, of course, that song became, I think, the reason for the success of the show. We were known as the show that has night and day in it.
Like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom when the jungle shadows fall. Like the tick, tick, tock of the stately clock as it stands against the wall. Like the drip, drip, drip of the raindrops when the summer shower is through. So a voice within me keeps repeating you, night and day. You are the one, only you beneath the moon and under the sun. Whether near to me or far, it's no matter, darling, where you are, I think of you. Night and day, day and night. Why is it so that this longing for you follows wherever I go? In the roaring traffic's boom,
In the silence of my lonely room, I think of you. Night and day, night and day, under the hide of me, there's an oh such a hungry yearning burning inside of me, and its torment won't be through till you let me spend my life making love to you day and night, night and day.
Fred Astaire singing one of Cole Porter's greatest songs, Night and Day. And you couldn't really get much more escapist than that. But what about those hit songs that you could take either way, as downright social preaching or downright evasion? In 1933, a most freakish example of this turned up when a Hollywood artist called Walt Disney, already riding the tide of the Mickey Mouse industry, came up with an animated cartoon called The Three Little Pigs. And ever since then, the musicologists have been arguing whether the song that the Three Little Pigs sang was an innocuous escapist jingle for tiny tots, or a shout of defiance at the gathering storms of unemployment, rearmament, breadlines, and dictators with no more territorial ambitions. Well, what do you think?
I built my house of straw, I built my house of hay, I twist my flute, I don't give a hoot, and play around all day.
I built my house of stones. I built my house of bricks. I have no chance to sing and dance. Work and play don't mix.
He don't take no time for play, time for play, time for play. All he does is work all day. Ra-la-la-la-la.
You can play and laugh and fiddle. Don't think you can make me sore. I'll be safe and you'll be sorry when the wolf comes through your door.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Big bad wolf, big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? I'll punch him in the nose. I'll tie him in a knot. I'll kick him in the shin. I'll put him on the spot.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Big bad wolf, big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? La 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 la.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf, according to Disney and Henry Hall? But who was the wolf? Our four-legged friend from the nursery rhymes, or the wolf at the door of half the homes in the Western world? Perhaps it doesn't matter. All that mattered to the Disney studios at the time was that the song became a vast hit over here as well as in America. The British by now were very nearly a colony of the United States, so far as popular songs were concerned. We had nothing comparable to the American movie industry. But sometimes we did turn up with a song that was widely popular, even if its appeal was strictly local. For instance, this next song, and the story that goes with it. It couldn't have meant much to a Texas oil tycoon or a New York shopgirl, come to that. Stanley Holloway reminisces about a songwriting team called Lee and Weston and the very peculiar, very eccentric and very British song they supplied him with.
Darling Bob Weston was stone deaf, you know, poor Bob. But he and Bert Lee used to meet every morning regularly and sit and talk. Bob would give his ideas and Bert Lee would put in what he called the tried and trusted gags, you see. It was old Bert that thought of, gags like, how do you spell consul? Oh, same as tonsil with a K, and all that. And so Bob used to ring me up. He could hear on the many people who are deaf can hear on the telephone. He used to ring me up, and one day the phone went. He said, "That you, Stan?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Bob West." I said, "Hello, Bob." He said, "I've got a number I think to suit you." I said, "Good." He said, "When would you like to hear it?" I said, "Anytime you like." He said, "Today?" I said, "Yes." And at that time I was in the show with Harry Pepper's White Coons. So this particular week, Harry said, what song are you going to sing this week? I said, "This one." So he put the music up and played it, and I sang it. And he stopped after I said, "She walks the bloody tower." Oh, he said, "You can't do that." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You couldn't sing that over the air." Well, I said, "Well, I didn't say why not." He said, "You can't say bloody over the air." And so we called down Roy, because he was a director of programs. He came down from the top of he was at the top of it. And he went in the control room, and Harry said, "Sing it again to Roy." I went straight to the microphone and sang it perfectly straight. And when I finished it, I went in the control room, and I said, "What do you think, Roy?" He said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think you should go over." I said, "I'm not using an adjective, I'm using a proper noun. You might say the Albert Hall, the Tower of London, the Bloody Tower, they're all proper nouns." I said, "You may have some people who take exception, but you've got a perfect answer, therefore you've got perfect publicity." He said, "Right, let it go." And of course it was a wonderful success. They loved it, because they'd never heard that done over the air. And of course, done with a sort of northern flavour. She walks the bloody tower. It was gentle. But when the band boys started to do it, "She walks the bloody tower," you see, then they stopped it because it didn't sound quite the same. The BBC stopped the band doing it. I remember a man wrote me a postcard, said, "Bravo, Stan," he said, "I haven't laughed so much since my wife broke her leg."
In the Tower of London, large as life, the ghost of Anne Boleyn walks, they declare. Poor Anne Boleyn was once King Henry's wife, until he made the headsman bob her hair. Ah, yes, he did her wrong long years ago, and she comes up at night to tell him so. With the head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower. With the head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. One night she caught King Henry, he was in the canteen bar. Said he, "Are you Jane Seymour, Anne Boleyn, or Catherine Parr? For how the sweet and fairy Anne do I know who you are? With your head tucked underneath your arm."
Dear old Stanley Holloway, with a bit of English architectural history. Of course, Stanley was, and still is, one of those singers whose background and training make him independent of newfangled inventions like the microphone and amplification. But the truth is that in Britain in the early 1930s, there weren't many people who even grasped the significance of electronic aids to singing, at least if one of our witnesses can be believed. By 1933, one of the most popular recording groups was the Boswell sisters, and their lead singer, Connie Boswell, has a really extraordinary tale to tell about how the London Palladium acquired its first amplifying equipment.
Now we go to Europe and we play the Palladium in 1933. We took our own mic set. They did not use a microphone in the Palladium or any other theater in 1933. And we brought our own technician, our microphones, and everything. The funny part is when we left England, they asked us if they could keep the set that we had, and that was the first microphone and speaker system that went in the Palladium was our set.
When I take my sugar to tea, all the boys are jealous of me, 'cause I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea, I'm a rowdy, dowdy, that's me. She's a hi-hat baby, that's she. So I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea, every Sunday afternoon, we forget about our cares, rubbing elbows at the wrist with those millionaires. When I take my sugar to tea, I'm as rich there as I can be, 'cause I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea. When I take my sugar to tea, all the boys are jealous of me, 'cause I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea, I'm a rowdy-dowdy, that's me. She's a hi-hat baby, that's she. So I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea. Rubbing elbows at the wrist with those millionaires. When I take my sugar to tea, I'm as risky as can be, 'cause I never take her where the gang goes. When I take my sugar to tea.
When Connie Boswell and her sisters got back home from England, minus their microphones in 1933, what did they find? An America profoundly altered from the one they'd left, because one of the first actions of the new president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, was to repeal one of the daftest pieces of legislation in modern history. He did away with prohibition. Before 1933, Americans loved to get drunk in defiance of the law. From now on, it was quite different. Americans loved to get drunk within the law. And with the passing of prohibition, passed also a whole era of tough music sponsored by the gangsters who controlled the drink supply. There were thousands of jazz musicians like Joe Masala who remembered the whole thing with considerable affection.
In most cases, in those days, when you worked in a place that was selling liquor, you were usually working for some of the boys. A lot of times they were there, and a lot of times they weren't there, except that every now and then you noticed sort of hard-looking characters around the place. As a matter of fact, this Cass Club was a favorite hangout of Texas Guinan, and she used to love a song called the Basin Street Blues, and she'd like to have us play it. And she paid us $1 a chorus, and when we finished playing it, if we told her we played 50 choruses, she'd give us $50. Tips in Prohibition days were more than the job was worth. For instance, I played in a job, and in the band were Wingy Manone, Jack Teagarden, Pepe Benitez on guitar, Dave Tuff on drums, and we only got $30 a week and a bottle of gin a night. That was our pay. So in order to add to that, we used to go to the tables and play tunes. For instance, Teagarden would go out with the trombone, and he'd come back with a fistful of money and drop it in the kitty, and then Wingy would go out and sing a couple of songs. This is the way we made our money. Except for the bad booze, it was a good time, because the booze wasn't too good, really.
Basin Street, baby, but I can't take you. Oh, 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 oh. Well, I'm going way down on Basin Street, baby, but I can't take you. Oh, 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 oh. And the way down yonder, and an ugly girl can't do.
When singer-musicians like Jack Teagarden stopped working for the mobsters who operated illegal liquor, some of them went into Broadway pit orchestras, some into dance bands, and some into the touring companies. Jack's trumpet-playing brother Charlie joined Jack for a time in the comforting ranks of the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, a group as elephantine as a silhouette of its leader, and perhaps this was the most secure job in the whole of the American music business for a working musician.
This is a man that was completely out all by himself. He had so much class and personality. He kind of reminds you of the way Frank Sinatra is today. Just walk into a room and the whole place just lights up. And Paul had the same kind of personality. Paul insisted on paying more money than any other band. He would never hear of anybody paying a sideman more salary than he would. The minute he heard that maybe Fred Waring might hire somebody and pay him X amount of dollars a week, Paul would hear about it and say, everybody gets a raise. Fred Waring's not going to cut me, one of these things. So, very, very generous man. We had the best musicians in the business all the years I was at Paul, because he could hire anybody. And, we always traveled in our own private Pullmans. We had our own private diner. We had our own private baggage cars. We didn't travel on buses or anything like that. If we couldn't hook onto a train going to our next engagement, we had a private train. We'd have our own engine to take us there. And it was the only band that operated that way that I ever worked with. When you got through with a job, all you had to do was just put your horn down on the stand, just leave your music right where it was, and just get up and walk off. And when you got to the next engagement, wherever or whatever it might be, you'd walk up on the stand, your instrument would be laying there, the book would be open right where you left it, And you never had to touch a thing. Nobody had to do anything except just sit there and play. That's all you had to do.
Talk with, but I'm happy by myself. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's just you I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. Oh, for you. Like Jack Horner in the corner. Don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for, believe me. I don't stay out late, don't care to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you.
Jack Teagarden singing and playing trombone. One of the things about Paul Whiteman that Charlie Teagarden didn't mention was his tireless search for new attractions, unknown talent. After all, it was Whiteman who first gave Crosby his chance, and in 1932 he hired a new singer, who, as it happens, never made it as big as Bing in the vocal stakes, but went on to become a world beater as a lyricist. His name was Johnny Mercer, who almost before he left Whiteman had written his first really big hit, a lyric called Lazy Bones.
One of my favorite collaborators and one of my closest friends is Hoagie Carmichael. I admired him as a singer. When I heard him years ago, he sang Washboard Blues and some things with Paul Whiteman. And 10 years after that, and I got to New York, I met him, and a fella said there was a chance to write a song with him. I said, "You don't mean it. Could it really be possible?" And he arranged this interview, and Hoagie and I began to write songs. And within a year, we had my biggest song, up until then, my song that really got me started, which was called Lazy Bones.
Long as there is chicken gravy on your rice, everything is nice. Long as there's a watermelon on the vine, everything is fine. You got no time to work, you got no time to play, busy doing nothing all the livelong day. You won't ever change no matter what I say, you're just made that way. Lazy bones, sleeping in the sun, how you expect to get your day's work done? Never get your day's work done, sleeping in the noonday sun. Lazy bones, sleeping in the shade, how you expect to get your cornmeal made? Never get your cornmeal made, sleeping in the evening shade. When taters need spraying, oh, I bet that you keep praying that the ladybugs fall off of the vine. And when you go fishing, I'll bet you keep wishing the fish won't grab at your line. You're just a lazy bone, open through the day. How you expect to make a dime that way? You'll never make a dime that way. Why, looky here, he never heard the word I say.
Lazy Bones, sung by Chick Bullock, music by Hoagie Carmichael, words by Johnny Mercer, a lyricist who was destined over the next few years to write more than one song that stars like Bing Crosby ended up warbling. But Crosby had more weighty things on his mind. His big hit in 1933 might strike us today as a bit comical. All that hothouse passion, heavy breathing, but in 1933 it was taken seriously enough, I can assure you.
You came, I was alone. I should have known you were temptation. You smiled, luring me on. My heart was gone. You were temptation. It would be thrilling if you were willing. If it can never be, pity me, for you were born to be kissed. I can't resist. You are temptation and I am yours. Here is my heart. Take it and say we'll never part. I'm just a slave, only a slave to you. Temptation.
Bing singing Temptation, a song that later on came in for some pretty merciless parodies. There were two other songs of the 1933 season that we still sing to this day. One of them had the sort of title that sounds a bit like a reference to the drinking habits that were supposed to have prevailed during Prohibition, but didn't. The title in question, I Cover the Waterfront. And that was a most improbable title dreamed up by the lyricist Edward Hayman.
Yeah, I Cover the Waterfront was a book, a famous book, and referred to a reporter who was covering the waterfront for a newspaper. And when they made a film of it, they wanted a theme song called I Cover the Waterfront. And of course I realized that if it was going to be popular, I couldn't write about a newspaper reporter. So it became a woman who went to the docks looking for her lover, expecting him to come on the next ship, and she would just come day after day after day. To me, it didn't have to be a woman really looking for her lover. It could have been a man looking for a sweetheart. I cover the waterfront, I'm watching the sea. Will the one I love be coming back to me?
I cover the waterfront, I'm watching the sea. Will the one I love be coming back to me? I cover the waterfront in search of my love, and I'm covered by a starless sky above. Here am I, patiently waiting, hoping and longing, oh, how I yearn. Where are you? Are you forgetting? Do you remember? Will you return? I cover the waterfront, I'm watching the sea, for the one I love must soon come back to me. I cover the waterfront, I'm watching the sea. Will the one that I love be coming back to me? and I'm covered by a starless sky above. Here am I lonely, wanting you only, oh how I yearn. Where are you, loved one? Come to me, sweetheart, say you'll return. I cover the waterfront, I'm watching the sea, for the one that I love must surely come back to me. Someday, somehow, sometime.
I Cover the Waterfront, here sung by Annette Henshaw. One of the more distinguished songs of 33, but not quite in the class of the really sumptuous ballad that the great Jerome Kern turned out for a show called Roberta. It was the type of song that only a highly skilled and much-trained musician could have produced. Not for nothing was Kern known as the great professor of the popular song. He later said that this song, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, was his favorite among all his repertoire. And that's very significant indeed, for there was never a better judge of things generally than Kern, as one of his collaborators, Johnny Mercer, testifies.
He was terribly smart, and I think he couldn't stand mediocrity. So he didn't have too much patience with people who didn't understand him. That's what I mean when I say he was autocratic. But he was really very gentle and terribly curious about everything. He collected coins. He collected first editions. He made a fortune on both of those things and selling them later on. He wanted to know exactly, what did you mean by that? He said, now exactly what do you mean by that? He'd check you up in conversation.
They asked me how I knew my true love was true. I, of course, replied, something here inside cannot be denied. They said someday you'll find all who love are blind. When your heart's on fire, you must realize smoke gets in your eyes. So I chopped them and I gaily laughed to think they could doubt my love. Yet today my love has flown away. I am without my love. Now laughing friends deride tears I cannot hide. I smile and say, when a lovely flame dies, smoke gets in your
Irene Dunn with Jerome Kern's Smoke Gets in Your Eyes from the musical Roberta. This song has become one of the all-time standard ballads, an undisputed masterpiece. But by mid-1933, when Smoke Gets in Your Eyes was beginning to register, the British had come up with a song which in its own way went down just as big. The background story to this local hit was really quite extraordinary, and a bit of an object lesson for all aspiring hit song writers. From time to time in these programs, we've heard songwriters from both sides of the Atlantic discussing the golden rule of composing for the popular market, which is never, never, never sell your song outright, or all your royalties go to somebody else. Well, one man did sell his song outright and lived to regret it. The unfortunate songwriter who sold his birthright for a mere £30 was Harry Leon. The song was Sally, and I'll give you 3 guesses who the singer was. Well, of course, you're right first time. Gracie Fields.
The year I went into films, I made that epic, they call it, Sally in Our Alley. It was in this film that my signature tune, Sally, was born. I've sung it all over the world since, in peace and war, but never in such a nightmare condition as the first time in the film studio. I was supposed to be in a coffee house, and to get the right smoky atmosphere, they burnt brown paper. Well, the fumes made the technicians sneeze, and every time anyone sneezed, we had to scrap the recording and start all over again. I remember standing there, my eyes streaming with the smoke and the glare of the lights, and the camera crew going red in the face and working like mad to get it in the can before they could either cough or choke. Well, somehow we finished that film, and it was a success.
When I met you, Sally, you were my gal, my little pal, so true. You came along, made life a song, Sally. If I lost you, I wonder what I'd do. Sally. Away from the alley and me, Sally, Sally, marry me, Sally, and happy forever I'll be. When skies are blue, you'll be darling, and when they're gray, you're still smiling, smiling. Sally, Sally, ride on our alley. You're more than the whole world to me.
Ragtime to Rock and Roll was narrated by Kenneth Moore. The program was written by Benny Green, and the research was by Bill Sullivan. The producer was Steve Allen. Next week's program, Let's Face the Music, reflects on the dance craze that followed the screen success of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.